You make no friends in the pits and you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your Bentley. Are you with me?
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Turn those machines back on!
You are about to enter the Peter Schiff Show.
Show me the money!
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on.
I don't know when they decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness.
Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve visible thickness and strength. Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off on their first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code GOLD. Today's podcast is sponsored by Mint Mobile. Get your new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/gold. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Good evening, everybody. I want to start off today's podcast by talking about gold, which has risen by better than $60 an ounce so far this week. I'm recording the podcast live on Tuesday evening, just after 8 p.m. New York time. Gold is trading just above $2,700 an ounce. So that means we're less than $100 below the all-time record high. So we've recovered most of what was lost following the election of Trump. In fact, gold was about $2,750, so it was already off its highs when Trump won the election. So gold's now only down, less than $50 from where it was. And in fact, I'm looking at gold trading on Wednesday morning in Australia, and gold is at an all-time record high tonight in Australian dollars. And recently it made all-time record highs in the euro and the British pound as well. So it's just the U.S. dollar that we haven't made a record high in, but we will shortly. So you're talking about maybe gold being down 3.5% from its record high. Yet if you look at the gold stocks, look at the GDX, based on where it closed today, and it's been up the last couple of days because gold's, really moved. But the GDX, which is the big index of gold mining stocks, would have to rise 16.4% to get back to the high from before Trump was elected. 16.4%. Gold only has to rally about 4% to make a new record high. That just shows you how overdone the sell-off in gold mining stocks is, how negative the sentiment is. In fact, if you look at where the GDX is trading now, it's trading about where it was in July, when gold is well over $300 an ounce higher now than it was in July. So none of the increase in the price of gold has benefited the companies that mine it. And of course, they own a lot of gold in the ground. That's what they're mining. They're mining their own gold. In fact, if you remember when Newmont Mining had a big drop, it was because of higher than expected costs. And most of that was from an Australian mine. They bought out and Newcrest Mining in Australia, or here. Maybe they bought them both, but there was some a higher cost. Well, costs are collapsing in Australia right now because the biggest cost for the mining company is the workers, the labor. Well, when the Australian dollar is falling as the price of gold is rising, that's the best of all situations for gold mining companies. See, normally when the price of gold is going up, the dollar is going down. And so that would mean the Australian dollar is going up or the Canadian dollar is going up. And so that would increase their local costs. But when you have a situation where gold is rising and the dollar is also rising, if that can happen, which is rare, but it's been happening, that's actually better for gold mining companies than when the dollar is falling, because it means their profits are going to go up even more. So what's happened recently, And if you throw in cheap oil, and oil prices under $70 a barrel in dollar terms are very cheap. So gold, I mean, oil in relation to gold is as cheap as it's ever been. This is great for the profits. So I know there has been some stumbling blocks. Companies have missed numbers, but I know that we are getting ready for some major upside surprises in earnings and dividends in these gold mining stocks, and nobody is positioned for that. So I really think people should be buying gold here at about 2,700. It's still a good price. Silver right about $32 an ounce. It held the $30 support level. As I've been saying on the podcast, I think $30 silver is like $2,000 gold was. That was the support that we rallied off of and went all the way up to almost 2,800 before we had a pullback on, Trump was the catalyst to get that, and the dollar rally. We got a pullback in silver as well, but it held that $30 support level, and $32 is a cheap price. So people should be buying the metals, going to schiffgold.com, calling up their reps at Schiff Gold and buying some metal. And again, even more so to take advantage of this gift opportunity in the gold mining stocks. If you happen to be a shareholder right now in the Euro Pacific Gold Fund and you noticed that the fund was down 95 cents today, it's not because it dropped. It actually was up a bit. We had to pay out a dividend. Every year, mutual funds are required by law to pay out capital gains that have been realized during the year. And so since it's not a static portfolio, we're buying and selling, and that activity generated capital gains, and now we have to pay that out to the shareholders. And, a lot of people who look at my funds and they look at the price and they try to say, oh, these funds have done lousy, they haven't gone anywhere. They don't factor in all these substantial distributions that are paid every year from these funds of both income and capital gains. So when you're just looking at the price of a fund, it doesn't really tell you anything because you have no idea how many distributions were made over the course of time, because a lot of the investors take those distributions and they just buy more shares. So instead of having a higher share price, they just have a much bigger share count, or they take those distributions and they live off of them. They spend them, right? So they got income off their investment, and that still counts as part of the return. But of course, again, nobody is paying attention to gold. Nobody's paying attention to silver. Even fewer people are paying attention to the mining stocks because they're just paying attention to Bitcoin. They had that 100,000 party. Bitcoin got above 100,000. It didn't stay there for long. I mean, it's back below it. In fact, I think it's around 96,000 now, but I mean, it's still pretty close. But, the main reason it's still so high is because of Michael Saylor, who just announced this morning another 2.1 billion spent buying Bitcoin. That's 13.6 billion he's spent since November 1st. And now he's got this other company, Mara, that just announced, I think today or yesterday, it just spent another $1.1 billion buying Bitcoin. You've got these companies that are levering up their balance sheet, issuing debt to buy Bitcoin. And again, the institutions that are lending them the money don't want to buy Bitcoin. They don't want to take the risk. They think they've got a freebie. They think they've got a free ride on Bitcoin by buying these convertible notes. They're hoping to cash in a big profit when either Mara or MicroStrategy shares go up, and they want to, sell with a big gain. But they expect that if the stocks go down because Bitcoin goes down, well, they just get their money back, right? Because they're creditors. They're guaranteed their money back. Well, they're not guaranteed anything if MicroStrategy can't pay or Mara can't pay, which they won't be able to do if the price of Bitcoin goes way down, which ultimately it is going to do, especially when all the buyers really, it's our MicroStrategy and Mara and a lot of these ETFs, which are all speculators. This is all spec money. Nobody is buying these companies to use Bitcoin as money, to use it as a medium of exchange. I mean, that was the entire purpose for which it was created. Go read the Satoshi white paper. They had to reinvent it as digital gold because it failed at its primary objective because it can't do it. But it's not digital gold either because it's got nothing in common with gold. Yet despite that, you hear all these asinine statements being made. Michael Saylor now is advocating. I'm not making this up. I just heard the interview. He's saying that he wants the U.S. government to sell all of its gold, 100% of it, and buy 25% of the Bitcoin in the world, like all just bought up by the U.S. government. And he claims that if the U.S. government does this, it'll make gold worthless. We'll demonetize gold and bankrupt all of our enemies who own gold. Well, first of all, if we're going to make gold worthless by selling it, how are we going to use it to buy 25% of the world's Bitcoin, right? So it doesn't even make any sense. But what good would it be to own 25% of the world's Bitcoin? I mean, it means nothing. He thinks, the U.S. is going to own the world. We're going to rule the world with 25% of nothing. We're going to be the laughing stock of the world if we did that. And meanwhile, our trading partners would scoop up that gold. It wouldn't be worthless. It'd be even more valuable when the U.S. government no longer owned it. I mean, it's the most asinine idea to suggest that. But again, Michael Saylor doesn't give a damn about the country. He just wants to prop up the price of Bitcoin. He's just talking up Bitcoin. He doesn't care how much damage he has to do to the U.S. economy. That's why a recent post I put on X, I said that Bitcoin is now a national security threat. It's public enemy number one. I mean, it's one thing if people want to be dumb enough and put their own money in Bitcoin. I mean, I don't care. People can lose money if they want. I mean, it's not good for society because we could use those resources productively. But, if in a free country, people can waste their money. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. People have a right to do dumb things. That's what freedom is all about. Now, we'd be better off if people did smart things with their money, but sometimes they do dumb things and they'll learn a lesson. But it's a completely different ballgame when you're talking about government using the public money, where politicians have been bribed to go out and buy Bitcoin. Just to do what? I mean, I was watching Larry Summers. At least, he was asked about this idea about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. He said it's the craziest thing he's ever heard. He says, why should we want to buy Bitcoin and just hold it forever just to prop up the price of Bitcoin and enrich a bunch of people who made donations to the Trump campaign? I mean, that is the only purpose of it. Remember, the Loomis bill not only requires the U.S. government to spend to buy a million Bitcoin, but it requires the government to hodl it for 20 years and never sell it, which, of course, defeats the whole purpose of having a reserve. How can you have a reserve that you could never sell, right? The purpose of a reserve for currency is you can sell it to defend your currency if you have to. But if you've already committed to never selling it for 20 years, then it's worthless as a reserve. And of course, if you could sell it, the price would crash, which also makes it worthless as a reserve. The only good thing is that this bill really has no chance of becoming law. If you look, Senator Loomis, who introduced it, there's no co-sponsored in this thing. None of the Democrats are going to vote for it. Well, there's just one guy in the House from Silicon Valley. He said that he was in favor of it. But I looked through the internet. I can't find anybody who's come out in favor of this bill. There's one somebody in Pennsylvania has introduced a bill on a state level to have the state of Pennsylvania have a Bitcoin reserve. I mean, they need that like a hole in the head. But again, I don't think the legislatures are actually going to pass any of this nonsense. And, that's really what they're trying to do. It's just the specter of it, the possibility has got people excited. And so people are buying, but the smart money is selling. A lot of people have been selling Bitcoin. Why do you think it didn't stay above 100,000? Somebody sold it. I put this out on X today, or not today. I think it was yesterday. And it shows you none of the Bitcoin crowd even understood what I was saying. But gold, the first gold ETF started 20 years ago. And there's a bunch of them now. But the first one was 20 years ago. And so over the past 20 years, if you look at all the gold that all these ETFs own, it's about 1.6% of the above ground supply of gold. That's it. 1.6% in 20 years. That's all they've been able to buy. Now, if you look at how much they own relative to the trading every day of gold, it's about 1 day's volume. So basically, if all of the gold ETFs in the world liquidated all their gold on the same day, the market would absorb it. I mean, gold might be down a bit, maybe it'd be down $100. I don't know, but the market would absorb the selling, all of it, no problem. Look at what's happened just this year with these Bitcoin ETFs. I think the Bitcoin ETFs, along with MicroStrategy and Mara, right? They own at least 8% of the Bitcoin already. Not just, like above ground, like gold, because there's gold in the ground that is not owned by these ETFs, but they own 8% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, right? All 21 million, right? They've already amassed 8% of it, and it hasn't even been a full year. I mean, at the rate they're going, they're going to gobble up all this Bitcoin. I mean, how scarce could it be when it was this easy for these ETFs and these companies to buy up so much Bitcoin? Somebody was willing to unload their Bitcoin on these entities. And again, these entities that own it, they're not married to it. This is a trade. They're expecting to sell. They're wanting to cash out. If you look at the total amount of Bitcoin held by these institutions, ETFs, it's over 10 times the daily trading volume. So if there's ever a big liquidation out of the Bitcoin ETFs, look out below. There is no depth to this market. Right now, they're all hoping that it's the government that's going to bail everybody out, right? A government bailout of Bitcoin, because the government is going to use the power of the state to coercively force people to buy Bitcoin that they don't want to buy, right? But it's not going to happen, right? Everybody is setting themselves up for something that's not going to happen. Meanwhile, the Trump family, they're out there pushing it. Eric Trump, I saw he made a speech at a Bitcoin conference in Abu Dhabi today or yesterday, whatever it was. I was actually invited to that conference. They offered to pay my airfare first class, put me up in a hotel. They even offered a small honorarium to get me to speak. And, I would have liked to have spoken there, but I just didn't want to take the time to make that long trip. I mean, they also tempted me with tickets to the Grand Prix race. They had like a booth there. It was, it sounds like a good time, but it's a long trip. I just got back from my vacation. We got winter break coming. I just didn't want to go all the way out to the Emirates. And, with the time zone change and everything. I mean, maybe if they had said, hey, we got Michael Saylor willing to debate you, I might have been willing to tough it out. But just to show up at a conference and, and be the party pooper on Bitcoin, it wasn't worth it to me. Maybe if it was in Miami. But the point is, I mean, Eric is saying ridiculous things about Bitcoin, absolutely ridiculous things, not quite as crazy as Saylor. But, that's the family business now that they're in. In fact, I meant to mention this on my last podcast, but when Bitcoin hit 100,000, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, which was reposted by one of his kids on X. He said, congratulations on $100,000 Bitcoin. You're welcome, right? He said, you're welcome, meaning he understands that they can thank him. But before anyone had a chance to thank Trump for helping push the price of Bitcoin to 100,000, he went out and did a preemptive, you're welcome. So he knows he's the reason that Bitcoin hit 100,000. He's the only reason it hit 100,000. Had he not been elected, it would probably be sub 50,000 right now. And by the way, Michael Saylor's average price now for MicroStrategy is finally over $60,000 per Bitcoin because he keeps averaging up with borrowed money. Anyway, we got a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. I got a lot to talk about on today's podcast, so you don't want to miss any of it. The holiday season is approaching, bringing joy and excitement, but also longer to-do lists, endless parties, indulgent treats, travel stress, and seasonal colds. What you might not realize is that all these things can take a toll on your hair health. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine now can help improve your hair health heading into the new year. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, trusted by over 1 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol men's hair growth supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol women's hair growth supplement for 6 months. With a Nutrafol subscription, building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no subscriptions required, automated deliveries, and free shipping keep you on track. Plus, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and a Headspace membership is included. The cold, dry air of winter can be unforgiving, but your hair doesn't have to suffer. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code GOLD. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code GOLD. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code GOLD. Okay, so I want to switch gears and talk some politics. First of all, I hadn't pointed this out yet. I know a lot of people are talking about this big red wave that we got in this election, Republican sweep. It's a mandate for change. And I don't think the mandate is quite as big as people seem to believe. I mean, yes, I know that people want to change because things were really bad. And so they want to change, but they didn't want real substantive change in government. Yes, they want to keep the immigrants out. They wanted to lower crime or build a wall. They want inflation to go away. There's some things that they hope happen, but they don't want to see the wholesale dismantling of the welfare state of big government. I mean, this is not the type of change that they voted for in Argentina. I think they just don't like the government that they had, and they want a government to do a better job of giving them free stuff than the last government did. But if you look at what happened in the House of Representatives, the Republicans actually lost 2 seats, and that's in contrast to the 2016 election where they picked up 2 seats. But in the 2016 election going in, the Republicans had a big lead in the House, much bigger than the one that they had going into this election. And so in 2016, when Donald Trump came to the White House, they had a 47-seat majority in the House of Representatives. Now they have just a 5-seat majority. And one of those seats is going to be vacated, right? Matt Gaetz, who is Trump's nominee for Attorney General, he gets appointed. I don't know how long it's going to take to fill his seat, but then they're down to 4. And that is a razor-thin majority, which means it's very difficult to get stuff passed because, there's a lot more than 4 rhinos in the House of Representatives. And I've been saying that. So it's not, this overwhelming mandate. Yeah, Trump won the popular vote this time because the economy was in worse shape and he had a worse candidate. I mean, Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate, but Kamala Harris was even worse. And Biden would have been bad. I mean, if the Democrats had some charismatic guy, had Biden stepped down earlier, which he should have because, he's completely, incompetent to be president. So had he stood down and not tried to run for re-election and had the Democrats had a real primary, they would have had a much stronger candidate. Now, that candidate still might have lost, but I think it would have been a much closer election. And Trump probably would have lost the popular vote. He may have won the electoral vote, but the candidate was so bad. The economy was so bad. That's why I thought Trump couldn't lose. But I think people are making a mistake if they're reading into it, like especially the libertarians, thinking that this is like a Ron Paul revolution. That's not what's going to happen here, right? As much as I would love to see something like that happening, I don't see any indication that that's what's going to happen. And I think one of the best indications of what you can expect was Donald Trump's performance on Face the Nation. So if you haven't seen that interview, it's over an hour long. It's up on the internet, on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. I mean, that's where I watched it. I didn't watch it live, but I knew he did. It was his first real interview, I guess, since winning. And it was very telling and very, very disturbing, if you're somebody who really wants change and wants, to dismantle government the way Elon Musk wants to. You didn't get any indication of that from this interview. So I made a few notes of some of the points that I want to discuss right now. And I know, look, a lot of times people, when I'm critical of Trump, they get upset at me. Look, I encouraged everybody to vote for Trump because I thought that Harris was worse. And there are other issues where Trump is going to be helpful. Social, pushing back against, DEI and woke and freedom of speech, a lot of non-economic things, cultural, free speech, things were important to support Trump for, right? Over Harris. But Trump was never my ideal candidate. I got a lot of issues with Trump. There are things I like about him, and there are a lot of things that I don't. But he's not Ron Paul. He's not even close. He's not Ronald Reagan. Maybe he means well. Maybe his heart is in the right place. It's hard to say because I know he's a great salesman. And so, you don't know, right? I mean, do you believe everything a used car salesman tells you when he's trying to get you to buy a car? So he did a good job of selling himself to the nation. But now that he's been elected, the sales pitch is continuing. He's not changing. He doesn't have to keep selling us. He's already, he already made the sale. But he's still sticking to his pitch. But I think it's important that I speak out, just like I was very critical of George Bush. Even though I supported Bush over the alternative, was it John Kerry the second time or the first time? The elections, but we had a financial crisis as a result of the policies that happened under Bush. I was criticizing those policies right up until the financial crisis. And then I criticized his response to the financial crisis, the bailouts that he supported as president. I criticized it. You had all these other Republicans. I remember on the Larry Kudlow show, I was the only Republican. Of course, I'm a libertarian Republican. I was the only Republican criticizing Bush. But he was presiding over a bubble, and I knew it. And I knew it wasn't going to end well. And the reason we elected Obama was because nobody had the guts to criticize Bush. And so the Republicans had no credibility in the 2008 election. And of course, had enough people criticize Bush, maybe he wouldn't have done those policies. Maybe he wouldn't have made the mistakes that allowed Obama that window. So I got to be consistent. I am not a party hack. I don't ignore the mistakes that are made by a Republican candidate, because the minute you do that, you have no credibility, and you can be accused of hypocrisy and all sorts of things. I call a spade a spade. I don't care. So when Biden does something wrong, I criticize it. If Trump does something wrong, I'm going to criticize it, okay? Because that's the only way we're going to get the record out there. And if there's things that we want to happen, if we just accept the things that we don't like, well, we're never going to get what we want or what we need. But anyway, so here's some of the stuff that Trump says. First of all, he stuck to his, talking point lie that the U.S. had the greatest economy in its history before COVID. We didn't even come close to having the greatest economy in history. But, if that's Trump's definition of the greatest economy in history, right, what we had before COVID, right, we don't have much to aspire to, because the reality is the economy was not doing well. Yes, we created, some manufacturing jobs better than we did under his predecessor, but it wasn't a boom in manufacturing by any stretch of the imagination. And the trade deficit went up, not down, despite the tariffs. But the deficits went up. The bubble got bigger. So Trump has completely mischaracterized what the economy was like when he was president the first time. So that's number one. But number two, and this was a big one, and this leaves him open, to the media, fact checking him, and they'd be 100% right. So Trump claimed that when he was president, we had no inflation. No inflation. That's not true, right? Prices rose maybe 8 or 9% over the 4 years that he was president. So that's not no inflation. I mean, even if prices are going up 2% a year, that's still 2% inflation. He didn't say we had 2% inflation. He said we had no inflation, zero. That's not true. But the bigger lie that he told, assuming he knows that it's not true, maybe he has no clue, in which case it's not a lie. He just has no idea what he's talking about. But he said that after he left office, inflation was so low that it took a year and a half, 2 years for it to rear its head, that there was no inflation for the first year or two after he left office. And that was his gift to Biden. And he blew it when inflation ran up. He's 100% wrong. So the highest point for inflation of the Biden term was 2021. Biden took office in January of 2021. That's when Trump handed him the baton. 2021 was the worst year for CPI. It was up 7% immediately after Trump left. So Trump is trying to absolve himself of any responsibility for the inflation that immediately reared its head the minute he left office. Now, had Trump won, we would have still had that 7% inflation in 2021 because it was caused by the policies that were implemented before he left office. All the stimulus money from COVID. Now, 2022, Biden's second year, CPI was 6.5% during his second year. Right? So the first year was the worst year. The second year was the second worst year. Now, Trump is claiming that inflation didn't rear its head until Biden's third term, his third year. During his third year, 2023, the CPI only went up 3.4% that year. That was the lowest year of the three. So the opposite of what Trump claimed. He didn't hand Biden zero inflation. He handed him an inflation bomb that went off as soon as Biden got it. So it's just completely dishonest or disingenuous or wrong for Trump to say that there was no inflation for a year and a half or 2 years after he left office. That is completely false. And again, it shows Trump doesn't even understand inflation, that has no regard for what actually happened in the economy. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe he just doesn't know anything, right? Maybe he just talks and he doesn't really know anything about what he's talking about, which may be the case. And now I want to get to his comments on tariffs, where he said tariffs are beautiful. He kept talking about beautiful tariffs, beautiful tariffs. And he said they don't cost consumers anything. How can that be? Can he be that ignorant? I mean, think about it. If tariffs really didn't cost countries anything, every country would just be imposing tariffs, right? If it doesn't cost your own people anything, why don't just run on tariffs, right? Why doesn't every country just impose tariffs if it doesn't cost anything for their own citizens, right? If you could just tax foreign countries, why not do that? Because they can't vote. It's preposterous. A tariff is a tax. It's a tax on the consumer for buying stuff. 100% of it is paid by consumers. There's nobody else to pay it, right? It's an indirect tax on consumers. How can Trump not know something so basic? And he still claims that nobody paid the tariffs that he enacted the first time, that we made a bunch of money on these tariffs. We didn't make a bunch of money. The government made money at the expense of the public who paid the tariffs. It's pure nonsense. Now, the reporter was saying, well, can you guarantee that the consumers won't pay? And he's like, well, no, I mean, I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee that there's going to be tomorrow. But he's basically saying, because I can't guarantee the sun's going to come up, right? So I can't guarantee. But he's basically saying, yeah, because I can't guarantee the sun's going to come up. I can't guarantee it, but it's not going to happen. And she was like, well, are you going to prosecute those CEOs if they try to pass on these tariffs to consumers? I mean, completely preposterous. Anyway, I got quite a few more things on this list, and then I got some more stuff to talk about. But let me take a quick commercial break, and we'll come right back because I got a lot more to say.
I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but it has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. It's time to switch to Mint Mobile today and enjoy unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. In fact, when it was time to get my son Preston his own phone, Mint Mobile was the perfect choice. Forget about the steep monthly fees and overages that you get with your current wireless plan and make the switch to Mint Mobile's premium wireless plans, starting at just $15 a month. Choose any Mint Mobile plan, which includes high-speed data with unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even keep your current phone and number when you switch and bring over all your existing contracts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited time deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/gold. That's mintmobile.com/gold. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/gold. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plans. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right, I am going over my list of grievances regarding the Donald Trump Face the Nation interview. So also continuing on with tariffs, another thing that he said was the United States has been subsidizing the rest of the world. He says we're subsidizing China, we're subsidizing Mexico, we're subsidizing Canada, and that has to stop. Now, what does he mean by we're subsidizing them? Well, we're running trade deficits. Well, that means they're subsidizing us. He's got it backwards. He thinks we're giving them a subsidy by allowing them to give us the stuff that they produce in exchange for the money that we print. He's got it backwards. We get real consumer goods that we don't have the capacity to produce that make our lives better. And what do they get? They get the fiat currency that we conjure out of thin air that they can't do anything with but buy our treasuries. So the world is subsidizing us. Trump doesn't get that. He's just looking at it as a businessman selling products, and he's not looking at it as trading nations. He doesn't understand. He just looks at Canada as a company that's making money and America as a company that's losing money. We are losing money, but we are benefiting in that in the short run, we are having our standard of living subsidized by our trading partners because they are accepting our IOUs and not demanding payment in real goods. But ultimately, we're supposed to be able to make good on these IOUs at some point in the future, but we can't. And so they're ultimately going to get caught holding the bag. But Trump doesn't understand anything about international trade, anything. And he doesn't understand anything about tariffs. And well, he's going to surround himself by people who are going to be yes men and rubber stamp what he wants to do on issues that he is clueless about, if he actually believes what he's saying. And of course, he doesn't have to run again. He's already got the job. And if he's still saying it, it's probably more likely that he actually believes it. Now, another statement that he made that could be troubling had to do with the deportation. And he was asked about, well, are you going to, do you want to break up the families? He says, no, I don't want to break up families. So if there's families where there are some legals and some illegals, then they all got to go, right? Because so I don't break them up. I want to get everybody out. Like he's callously talking about kicking out a lot of people that, are probably, on balance contributing to the economy, paying taxes and doing jobs that a lot of other people don't want to do. Now, again, people are going to criticize me. Oh, how can I defend the illegals? I'm not defending the criminals. I'm not defending the ones on welfare. I'm just pointing out that everybody else is pitching in and doing things that we need to be done. Yes, they're here illegally, but everything else they've done since they came here illegally has been legal as far as doing an honest day's labor. Would I prefer they be here legally? Absolutely. That's why I want to reform immigration to make it easier for the good people to come and harder for the bad people to get in, right? But that's not what we're talking about doing. But one of the things he said, I guess I agree with, that was good, although not that I support Powell, but he backed away from trying to kick out Powell because she asked him, are you going to, ask Powell to resign? And he said, well, if I asked him, he would do it, which he wouldn't. But I'm not going to do that. Right? I mean, he's only got an extra year. Why rock the boat? No point. He can put his yes man in a year later. Another thing he said, and maybe, maybe this is a truthful statement, but it just says a lot that he doesn't know the answer to this. But he talked about the youth vote and how well he did with youths. And he said that normally Republicans, lose the youth vote. And he said, I don't know why. I have no idea why Republicans do so badly with youth. How can he not know that? It's simple, right? When you're young and you're naive and you don't have the life experience and the knowledge, you vote liberal. You vote for the left. You vote for government, right? I've mentioned that quote. It's been around for time. Maybe Trump hasn't heard it, but if you're not a liberal by the time you're 22, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative by the time you're 28, you don't have a head. So you're expected to be a Democrat when you're young, right? But then you're supposed to grow out of that and become a Republican. It's like when you're a little kid, you believe in Santa Claus. Why don't adults believe in Santa Claus? I hope there's no little kids. It's a spoiler here for Christmas, right? Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but you grow up and then you realize things that you didn't know when you're a kid. Well, when Democrats grow up, they become Republicans. If they don't grow up, they stay Democrats. So I don't know why Donald Trump doesn't get that. But that's always been the case. I mean, that's why the Democrats want to keep lowering the voting age. The lower, the better, right? If we just let kids vote, if we let the elementary school kids vote, yeah, the Democrats would win in a landslide, right? Just promise some candy and toys and, less school, whatever, just say whatever they want to hear. You'll get their votes, right? But I think maybe the most troubling thing that he said is, and I forget the question that was asked, but his answer was, he started talking about something he got right. And he said, I've gotten everything right. I've been right on everything I've ever said. So he doesn't think he's been wrong on anything, despite the fact that he's been wrong on so many things. Trump says he's never been wrong on anything. Now, I just went over a bunch of things that he got wrong. And in this very interview where he got a bunch of stuff wrong, he said he's never gotten anything wrong ever. So he's, he obviously is very conceited. He's, he thinks very highly of himself. So, I mean, if he really believes that he's infallible and he can't do anything wrong, I mean, look, that's not good. I mean, people have to recognize that, they don't have all the answers and they make mistakes. I mean, I've made mistakes and Trump's made more than I have. Although, look, he's gotten to be president. He's become a billionaire. So he's gotten a lot of things right. I'm not saying he hasn't done a lot of things right. But, in business, he made mistakes. So does everybody. He had a lot of bankruptcies. He had failures, which is fine. You fail until you succeed. You learn from your failures. But you admit, hey, I got stuff wrong and I learned from my mistakes. But what he's saying is, I never make mistakes. I've gotten everything right. But the final thing I want to point out, which is a good segue into my last topic, had to do with entitlements and then Obamacare. So he was asked about entitlements. Social Security, absolutely not. We're not going to cut Social Security. He said, we're not even going to change the age in which you're eligible for retirement. No cuts to Medicare, Obamacare, Medicaid, nothing. All that is completely off the table. So if Donald Trump is really here to be a transformational, game-changing president, how can he punt away the most important issue that nobody wants to deal with, which is entitlement reform? He completely took any chance of any entitlement reform off the table again by saying, I won't touch Social Security. I won't even change the retirement age. No changes whatsoever. So he's going to leave all those difficult choices to the next president, right? Because he doesn't want to make them. And that problem is just going to get bigger when the next president has to face even more difficult choices that Trump has no courage, right? He had courage, to fight after he got shot, right? He was courageous there. He took a bullet to the ear, fight, but he has no courage to go against the AARP, right? Or to do anything that might anger somebody who's on Social Security or expecting to collect Social Security or Medicare or Obamacare or any of that. And again, when it came to Obamacare, he gave his cop-out answer once again. He said, well, we're not going to get rid of Obamacare unless we can find something better to replace it with. I mean, what is that? What do you mean something better? There's nothing better because it stinks. He's right. but you can't replace it. And he keeps saying, well, we've got a concept of a plan. What's that? You got a concept of a plan? You got nothing. There is no plan. There's only one plan that works, and that's free market capitalism. That's the plan. What Trump should be advocating is to get rid of Obamacare and replace it with nothing. That's what works, because when you replace it with nothing, you get something great. You get free market capitalism. That is the answer. That is the solution to the healthcare problem. But if you acknowledge that solution, then you've got to say, oh, we can't cover pre-existing conditions. But no, Trump says, no, absolutely not. We want to make sure that everybody with pre-existing conditions is covered. Well, okay, then Obamacare is here for good, and it's never going to be replaced. Because the minute you have a force insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions, you no longer have insurance. You've destroyed the entire concept of insurance, and now you have free healthcare. And that's what Obamacare is about. It's about something for nothing. And Trump doesn't want to take that away. So we're stuck with it, right? If you could buy fire insurance after your house burned down, nobody would buy fire insurance. And of course, there'd be no fire insurance companies, because all they would do is be paying out claims, right? If you could get auto insurance after you get into an accident, nobody would buy auto insurance before they got into an accident. But if no one bought auto insurance before they got into an accident, there'd be no automobile insurance industry. See, when you buy insurance, the idea is that you're not going to get your money. You're paying premiums, and the expectation is you've lost the premium. And the reason insurance companies can pay claims is because most people don't put in claims. And so they have all this money. So if you're healthy, you buy insurance in case you get sick. Hopefully you don't get sick and you wasted your money on the insurance. But now the guy that does get sick, well, he cashes in his policy. And now the insurance company has money to pay the claim because of all the claims it didn't pay. But if you tell healthy people, hey, you don't have to buy insurance that you're probably not going to need, just wait till you get sick, well, then the insurance companies aren't going to have any money to pay the claims of the sick because they never collected any premiums from the healthy. So they destroyed the whole industry. Look, there is a way to deal with pre-existing conditions, but not through Obamacare. And, and this is my next segue that I got to get into. On this topic. And so I want to talk about two deaths that were completely unrelated. But if you juxtapose what happened, it's very important and very significant as to what's going on in this country. So first of all, you had the murder in cold blood of Brian Thompson, United Healthcare CEO, right? Gunned down, premeditated murder, execution. They just caught the guy who did it, Luigi Mangione, or Mangione, how to pronounce his name, Luigi. I'll just call him Luigi because I can pronounce that. 26-year-old kid, very privileged kid, went to a prep school, valedictorian. You can see his valedictorian speech on YouTube. Went to University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League school. Kid had everything going for him. How he ended up getting brainwashed through our universities and school system. But clearly, he had an axe to grind with the health insurance industry. When they captured him, he conveniently happened to have a copy of a manifesto on him that he was dumb enough to carry around. But, listing some grievances he had with the healthcare industry. In fact, on the bullet case that he used to shoot this guy, he had written 3 words: delay, deny, and depose, which is almost the exact title of a 2010 best-selling book, Delay, Deny, Defend: Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. So he is clearly sending a message that he is executing the CEO of a insurance company because the insurance companies are bad, because they deny claims and they're killing people. And this is sending a strong message that, the industry better straighten up its act, or this is what's going to happen to more executives, right? Now, first of all, a lot of people may not know this, but the United States government or the U.S., we spend $4.5 trillion annually on healthcare. $4.5 trillion total, government, private sector, $4.5 trillion. The profits of all the insurance companies in the country combined is $40 billion. So that's less than 1% of what we spend on healthcare. Less than 1%. So assuming we wiped out all of the profits that the insurance companies had, 100% of the profits, we would reduce healthcare costs by less than 1%. Less than 1%. Now, of course, if we eliminated all the profits in the health insurance industry, we'd have no health insurance. So you think we have problems now. Imagine what the problems would be like if there was no health insurance, if nobody could buy health insurance. You know, the health insurance companies are not making a fortune. The margins that they have are like 3%. It's not much higher than a supermarket. This is a highly competitive industry. They're not making a lot of money. The insurance companies are not the problem. Their profits are not the problem. And, you know, if they didn't deny claims, if they just approved every claim they got, they'd go out of business because their margins are thin, or they'd have to really jack up prices on everybody else. Look, the people who are paying health insurance, they want to make sure that other people aren't putting in false claims. You don't think there's fraud? You don't think people put in false claims? You know, they're not going to rubber stamp every claim. They have to investigate. That's their job. They have to make sure they're not paying claims that they don't have to, so that they can pay the claims that they do have to. Now, does that mean there aren't going to be occasions where probably somebody is entitled to a claim and they don't get it? Yeah, they're not perfect. They're not, they're not infallible, right? And so there's going to be these situations, and, there could be recourse, and people can take their insurance companies to court or file a suit if you really feel you were unjustly denied a claim. But they have to do this. They can't just pay every claim, and just because they feel bad for the person who's putting it in, because they'll destroy their profits. And if they have no profits, there's no industry. And if there's no industry, there's no health insurance. And health insurance is an important concept. We need to pool risks. The big problem with health insurance is that we use it too often. And that's because of the government, because of the tax-free nature of it. If you work for a boss and you get health insurance, it's tax-free. If you get wages and then use the money to buy health insurance, it's taxable. Now, before the government got everybody getting their health insurance through their employer, people bought insurance. And when they did, they bought it for catastrophic things. They didn't have insurance, for checkups. They didn't have insurance for routine medical procedures. They paid out of pocket. That kept the cost down. Now that everything is paid by a third party, no matter what, the costs have exploded. Look, if you want to be upset about the high cost of healthcare, be mad at the doctors. They're the ones making the money. The hospitals, the administrators, that bureaucracy. It's the service providers that are getting all the money that the insurance companies are paying out. And because the doctors are charging so much, that's why insurance is so expensive. Why are the doctors charging so much? Because nobody cares. Because nobody shops around, because too many people have insurance. That is the problem. Nobody asks the doctor, hey, what's this going to cost? Is this really necessary? No one cares. Do whatever you have to do. I mean, a lot of times if you ask a doctor what it's going to cost, they don't even know. They can't even tell you a price. What other industry is like that, where the people providing a service have no idea what the service is going to cost? All of this is because of government and government involvement in healthcare and insurance. But the other point I want to make here about this is you got a lot of people who are cheering this guy. Like, this guy is a hero. He should be pardoned. Like, Biden should pardon this guy. Apart from the fact that he's a good-looking kid, and some of the women are like pointing out, hey, he's good looking. They're thinking he's a hero because he took out a big bad health executive who's harming people. He's not harming anybody. He's running a company, an important company. We need CEOs of these companies. He's doing a good job. And he's a family, he's got a family, he's got a wife and kids. The fact that anybody is celebrating the fact that this man was murdered in cold blood just shows you how ridiculous this is. But I'm going to go from the sublime to the ridiculous when I contrast what is happening with Luigi murdering Brian Thompson and Daniel Penny. And I haven't talked a lot, about my podcast about the Daniel Penny trial. I assumed he was going to get acquitted. I assumed it was pretty obvious that there wasn't any murder there. But I want to talk about, just to contrast it to what's going on here, because, everybody knows, right? Daniel Penny, he's the guy that was a hero, an ex-Marine. He was on a subway train in New York when Jordan Neely, 30-year-old guy, mentally disturbed, drug addict, whatever he was threatening people on the train, physically getting in their face, talking about how somebody is going to die today, and really scaring the hell out of a bunch of women and children who were on this subway train. And so this guy decides to risk his own safety to protect the people on this train. And he subdues him with a chokehold, right? He's not trying to kill him. He's not a murderer. He's just trying to neutralize the threat, hold this guy, protect himself, right? Because, he's got to worry that this guy is violent. I mean, I don't want to get hurt either. He wants to protect the innocent, but he, wants to protect himself. So he gets him in this hold, which he doesn't think is lethal, right? He's just trying to restrain him. And so, the train eventually stops. The police get there. They take him away, right? I guess he passed out, from the encounter. And I think about 40 minutes later, after he left the train, he died, right? He ended up dying. Now, clearly, Daniel Penny did not want this guy to die, right? That was not his, he didn't even want to have to do what he did. He just acted in valor, right, to protect women and children on the subway. And unfortunately, the guy died. I'm sure he feels bad that the guy died, right? Now, according to the autopsy, yes, he died from the asphyxiation from the neck compression. But according to the autopsy, it wasn't just that. It was a combination of fentanyl that he was high on, and he had a heart condition. So fentanyl, heart condition, neck suppression led to death. Now, Penny didn't know the guy had a heart condition. He didn't know the guy was on fentanyl. He was just trying to neutralize the situation. If he wasn't on fentanyl, if he didn't have heart disease, he would have survived. Does this sound familiar? I mean, this is just like George Floyd. Same stuff. Fentanyl, heart condition, neck suppression. Oh, he ended up dying, right? It's unfortunate, but this is not murder, right? Penny never meant to kill him. The police knew that. They didn't charge him. It took a week. You know why they charged him? Because the public was outraged because a white guy supposedly got away with murdering a black guy, right? Again, that's the only reason. Now, I hear people are saying, oh, he only got acquitted because he's white. No, he only got charged because he was white. If he was black, he wouldn't have been charged. And if Neely was white, he wouldn't have been charged. It was only because the so-called victim was black and the murderer was white. That's the only reason that there was a trial. And of course, there were African-Americans on the jury. There were African-Americans on the train, right? They're saying, oh, he was a racist. They had no evidence that he was a racist whatsoever. In fact, he was protecting African-Americans from another African-American, right? So how is he racist? And how would he have done anything different had the race of Jordan Neely, been different? If he was white, he would have done the exact same thing. But the point I'm making here is some of the same people, right, that are saying that Luigi is a hero and he should be pardoned, want this guy in jail, are upset that he was acquitted, right? And are demanding retribution. You've got people now, I've seen them on the internet, African-Americans, they're basically threatening this guy's life, saying, you better watch out. We're coming to get you. You're not going to be safe in this city. Anybody threatening him with harm, they should be arrested and go to jail. You can't threaten to exact your own justice because you disagree with the verdict of the jury who heard the evidence and acquitted him. Now you could object. Look, I didn't agree with a lot of verdicts that I've heard. But I don't say, well, go out and take out retribution on the people. Look, they're willing to forgive Luigi, who murdered someone in cold blood, who intended to kill Brian Thompson. He planned this out for weeks, maybe months. He had a lot of time to think this out. He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly, what he was doing, that it was wrong. This is not like a crime of passion where he just, killed somebody in a fit of anger. This is the kind of stuff that's a capital punishment. This is death penalty stuff, except they don't have the death penalty in New York, so he's not going to be sentenced to death. I mean, maybe this guy is completely nuts. Maybe he's got an insanity defense. I don't know. But a premeditated murder, they're willing to forgive this, right? And call him a hero. And then you got Daniel Perry, who's an actual hero, who didn't mean to kill anybody. He was trying to save lives, not take a life. And this guy, they want to go to jail for murder. Now, imagine if Brian Thompson was black, not white, right? You think anybody would be saying, let Luigi go? No, they would be making this a racial thing, right? They would be saying, oh, look, you see, it's open season on African Americans if Brian Thompson was black. So none of these people who are defending Luigi would be defending him if Brian Thompson was black. But he's just a white guy, right? And so no one gives a damn about white guys. In fact, they deserve to be murdered if they're healthcare executives denying claims. When, as I said, that is their job. You don't deny claims, you don't have an insurance industry. You don't have an insurance industry, nobody can buy health insurance. Think about all the people who have their claims paid. Everybody wants to focus on the people who put in claims and they get denied. The vast majority of these claims are not denied. They're paid in full. And they're only paid in full because the insurance companies do a good job of not paying out bogus claims and letting people know in advance, right? You got to have insurance before you get sick, because if you wait till after you get sick, you can't buy it because otherwise they're not going to have the money. Now, they've already screwed that up a lot with Obamacare, and so the insurance industry is already a lot less efficient than it would have otherwise been, but there's still some elements of market competition in there. Why do you think the margins are so low? Right? If they were really just gouging everybody, you think they'd have more than 3% margins? I mean, there's not that many businesses that have margins as low as health insurance. Anyway, that's it for today's podcast. Remember, I'm going to come back later in the week. We're going to talk inflation. We're going to get CPI. We're going to get PPI. We got some other data. I expect some market reactions. I'll be talking about that. In the meantime, don't forget, keep signing up for your free subscriptions at Schiff Sovereign. And if you like this podcast, don't forget to let me know in the comment section. Give me a comment. Give me the thumbs up. Give me the like. And I'll be back again with the next podcast shortly. Take care.